Before we begin, let us know where you're listening from. After the story, rate it from 1 to 10. Now let's start. In all my years chronicling the scandals and sensations of London society, I have never witnessed a season quite as extraordinary as that of 1815. The Ton, as we affectionately call our glittering aristocracy, was still celebrating the victory at Waterloo when the most remarkable drama began to unfold in their very midst. It was a truth universally acknowledged that Prince Regent's annual midsummer ball at Carlton House would be the event of the season. Ladies of quality had been preparing for months, ordering silks from Paris, despite the recent unpleasantness with Bonaparte, practicing the latest country dances, and, most importantly, scheming for advantageous matches for themselves or their daughters. No one had greater schemes than Lady Montclair, whose daughter Penelope was widely considered the season's incomparable. With flaxen curls arranged in the latest Grecian style and a dowry that would make even the most indebted earl take notice, Penelope had been groomed since birth for one purpose: to secure a match of the highest rank possible. "I shall not settle for less than a duke," Lady Montclair was overheard declaring at Lady Harrington's musicale just days before the Carlton House ball. The matrons, nodding in agreement, had no idea how spectacularly those ambitions would soon be dashed. But I, dear reader, am getting ahead of myself. Let us turn our attention to the true hero of our tale, Lord Reginald Melville, Duke of Westmoreland, who had only recently returned from the continent where he had distinguished himself in Wellington's army. At 30 years of age, the Duke was in possession of a considerable fortune, an ancient title, and, much to the delight of the marriage-minded mammas, no wife. What made the Duke particularly intriguing was his notorious distaste for London society. He preferred his country estate, where he could ride across his vast lands and improve the conditions of his tenants without the constant nattering of the ton. Alas, duty called him to London to attend to parliamentary matters, and his grandmother, the formidable Dowager Duchess of Westmoreland, insisted he make an appearance at the Prince Regent's ball. "You cannot avoid matrimony forever, Reginald," she told him over tea in her Mayfair drawing-room, her arthritis-gnarled fingers still elegant as she poured. "I should like to see great-grandchildren before I die." The Duke sighed. "Grandmamma, you will outlive us all out of sheer stubbornness, and we both know it." "Impertinent boy, I raised you better." But her eyes twinkled with affection. "One night, that is all I ask. Attend the ball, dance with a few suitable young ladies, and perhaps you will find one who doesn't bore you to tears." "That would be a miracle indeed," he muttered, but he agreed to her request. What neither the Duke nor his grandmother could have anticipated was the chain of events that would be set in motion by a broken carriage wheel on the Great North Road, just 3 days before the Prince Regent's ball. The Duke was returning from inspecting his northern properties when the accident occurred. It was raining heavily, and his carriage lost a wheel in a particularly treacherous bend. His coachman was injured in the fall, and the nearest village was Thornfield, a small hamlet known primarily for its excellent cheese. "We'll have to seek shelter until the wheel can be repaired," the Duke told his valet as they helped the coachman to his feet. There must be an inn nearby. There was indeed an inn, the Thornfield Arms, a modest establishment that catered primarily to local farmers and the occasional traveler. It was there that the Duke first laid eyes on Miss Tabitha Grantham. Now, I must pause here to note that Miss Grantham was not what one would call a conventional beauty. She lacked the fashionable pallor of London ladies, her skin sun-kissed from working outdoors. Her chestnut hair was simply arranged, and her dress, while clean and well-maintained, was several seasons out of date. What she possessed, however, was a pair of the most expressive hazel eyes the Duke had ever encountered and a quick wit that he found refreshing after years of simpering debutantes. Miss Grantham was the daughter of the local physician, a respected man who had provided her with an education far superior to what most young women of her station received. Dr. Grantham had studied at Edinburgh and insisted his daughter learn not only the traditional feminine accomplishments, but also mathematics, natural philosophy, and 3 languages. "You're staring, Your Grace," she said when she caught the Duke watching her as she tended to his injured coachman. "I assure you I know what I'm doing. My father taught me." "I don't doubt your competence, Miss Grantham," he replied, amused by her directness. I was merely wondering why a young woman with your obvious intelligence is hidden away in this village rather than dazzling London society." She laughed, a sound as natural and unaffected as a stream over stones. "I believe London society might find me more alarming than dazzling, Your Grace. I've been told I speak my mind too freely for polite company." "Then polite company is all the poorer for it," he said, and meant it. The Duke's carriage required 3 days to repair, during which time he found himself increasingly drawn to the physician's daughter. They discussed books, agriculture, politics, subjects that would have scandalized the drawing rooms of Mayfair, and the Duke discovered something he had thought impossible, a woman whose company he genuinely enjoyed. On the eve of his departure, as they walked in Dr. Grantham's modest garden, the Duke made an impulsive decision that would set all of London ablaze with gossip. "Come with me to London," he said. "The Prince Regent is hosting a ball tomorrow evening." Miss Grantham stared at him as if he had suggested she fly to the moon. "Have you taken leave of your senses, Your Grace?" "I cannot simply appear at a royal ball. I have no suitable gown, no connections, no." "I have a sister," he interrupted. "She is approximately your size and has more gowns than she could wear in a year. As for connections, you would be under my protection." "Under your protection?" Her eyes narrowed dangerously. "I hope you are not suggesting what that phrase typically implies, sir." The Duke flushed. "Good God, no. I meant as my guest. My grandmother will act as your chaperone." He hesitated, then added, "The truth is, Miss Grantham, I find the prospect of this ball far less tedious if you were to attend." "Why?" she asked, genuinely puzzled. "Because you're the only woman of my acquaintance who hasn't simpered at me or tried to trap me into matrimony. Because you speak to me as a person rather than a title. Because—" he stopped, surprised by his own vehemence. "Because I should like to see Lady Montclair's face when you discuss Aristotle with more intelligence than her precious daughter could ever hope to possess." That made her laugh, and in the end, after consulting with her father, Miss Grantham agreed to this mad scheme. The Duke sent word ahead to his grandmother and sister, who were surprised but intrigued by his request. The Dowager Duchess, in particular, was curious about the provincial miss who had captured her grandson's interest when countless diamonds of the first water had failed. Which brings us, dear reader, to the night of the Prince Regent's ball. Carlton House was resplendent, its grand ballroom illuminated by thousands of candles that reflected off gilt mirrors and crystal chandeliers. The crème de la crème of society had assembled, dressed in their finest silks and jewels, eager to see and be seen. The Duke's arrival caused the usual stir. Unmarried lords of his rank and fortune always did, but it was the young woman on his arm who truly set tongues wagging. Miss Grantham was attired in a gown of pale blue silk borrowed from Lady Amelia, the Duke's sister. Her hair had been arranged by Amelia's lady's maid in a more fashionable style, adorned with a simple strand of pearls from the Dowager Duchess's own collection. "Who is she?" whispered Lady Montclair to the Countess of Branley. "Some country nobody, I'm told," replied the Countess. "A physician's daughter from a village in the north. Can you imagine? The Duke must have lost his mind. Or found a particularly accommodating mistress," Lady Montclair said with a sniff. "Well, he'll come to his senses soon enough. Penelope is looking particularly enchanting tonight." Indeed, Miss Penelope Montclair was a vision in pale pink, her golden curls arranged to perfection, her face composed in an expression of practiced demureness. She had spent years perfecting the art of appearing both innocent and alluring, and she deployed these skills ruthlessly as the Duke approached with his unusual companion. "Your Grace," she curtsied deeply, affording him a glimpse of her décolletage. "We have missed your presence in town this season." "Miss Montclair." The Duke bowed politely but showed no particular interest. "May I present Miss Tabitha Grantham?" "Miss Grantham, Miss Penelope Montclair." Penelope's smile didn't falter, but her eyes grew cold. "How quaint to meet you, Miss Grantham. I don't believe I'm familiar with your family." "You wouldn't be," Tabitha replied cheerfully. "We don't move in the same circles. My father is a country physician." The assembled company within earshot fell silent. A physician's daughter? Presented at Carlton House? It was unprecedented. The whispers began immediately. Did she say physician? How did she even gain entry? The Duke must have bribed the footman. Perhaps she's a relative of his valet. The Duke of Westmoreland, seemingly oblivious to the stir he was causing, guided Miss Grantham through the ballroom toward where the Prince Regent stood surrounded by his favorite courtiers. The crowd parted before them like the Red Sea, equal parts scandalized and fascinated. The Prince Regent, corpulent and resplendent in his finery, greeted the Duke warmly. "Westmoreland, good to see you, my boy. Wellington speaks highly of your service." "Your Royal Highness," the Duke bowed. "May I present Miss Tabitha Grantham?" The prince's eyebrows rose as he took in the young woman's modest appearance and the absence of a title. Nevertheless, he was in a good mood and found the situation amusing rather than offensive. "Charmed, my dear," he said, taking her gloved hand. "And how do you find London society?" "Overwhelming, Your Royal Highness," Tabitha answered honestly. "But fascinating. Rather like visiting a foreign country where I don't quite speak the language." The prince laughed heartily. "Refreshingly direct. I like that. Tell me, what brings you to our little gathering?" Before she could answer, the Duke spoke. "Miss Grantham has done me the honor of accepting my hand in marriage, Your Highness. I wish to introduce my future Duchess to society." The silence that followed was absolute. One could have heard a pin drop on the marble floor. Then, like a dam breaking, laughter erupted throughout the ballroom. Not gentle, amused laughter, but the cruel, mocking kind reserved for those who have committed a social faux pas of monumental proportions. "A duchess," Lady Montclair's voice carried clearly. "A country nobody is Duchess of Westmoreland? It's absurd." The Duke's face hardened as he surveyed the laughing crowd. Tabitha stood frozen beside him, her face pale but her spine straight. She had known this would happen, had warned him it would, but the reality was still painful. But when the Dowager Duchess of Westmoreland stepped forward and took Tabitha's hand in her own, the laughter began to falter. "I, for one, am delighted," declared the Dowager in her formidable voice. "My grandson has chosen a woman of intelligence, compassion, and moral fiber, qualities sadly lacking in many of you who presume to mock her." The Prince Regent, never one to miss an opportunity for drama, clapped his hands. "Well said, Duchess. And if Westmoreland has chosen this young lady, who are we to question his judgment? He has shown excellent taste on the battlefield. I trust his taste in wives equally." The tide began to turn. Those closest to the prince immediately offered their congratulations. Others, seeing which way the wind was blowing, quickly followed suit. Only a few, like Lady Montclair, continued to glare daggers at the presumptuous country miss who had somehow snared one of the most eligible bachelors in England. "You didn't tell me you intended to announce our engagement," Tabitha whispered to the Duke as they moved away from the prince's circle. "Particularly as you have never actually proposed." "An oversight I intend to remedy immediately," he replied, "though perhaps somewhere more private than the middle of the Prince Regent's ballroom." They slipped away to the terrace, where the cool night air provided a welcome respite from the overheated ballroom and its equally overheated gossip. "You realize you've created a scandal that will be discussed for years," Tabitha said, looking out over the carefully manicured gardens. "They're all in there laughing at you." The Duke who lost his mind over a country girl. "Let them laugh," he replied. "I find I care remarkably little for their opinions." He took her hands in his. "I had intended to court you properly, to give you time to know your own mind. But seeing you tonight, watching you face their disdain with such dignity, I knew I couldn't wait. For a man who claims to dislike society, you certainly know how to create a sensation," she said, but she was smiling. "Tabitha Grantham," he said, dropping to one knee on the terrace stone. "I have known you less than a week, yet I feel I have found something I didn't even know I was searching for. Will you do me the great honor of becoming my wife?" She looked down at him, this powerful man kneeling before her as if she were the one with a title and fortune. "Are you certain?" "They will never fully accept me." "Then they are fools," he said simply, "and I have no use for fools." "Yes," she said, her voice steady despite the tears shining in her eyes. "Yes, I will marry you." When they returned to the ballroom, something had shifted. The Duke's grandmother had been busy in their absence, making it clear to all that she fully supported the match. The Prince Regent, ever the romantic despite his own marital troubles, had declared it a love match for the ages and insisted on drinking a toast to the couple. Lady Montclair, seeing her carefully laid plans for her daughter crumble, made one last desperate attempt to salvage the situation. "She cannot possibly know how to manage a ducal household," she said loudly as the couple passed. "Why, I doubt she even knows which fork to use for fish." The Duke paused and fixed her with a cold stare. "I find, Lady Montclair, that I would rather have a wife who knows how to set a broken bone than one who knows which fork to use for fish. The former skill has saved lives. The latter has yet to prove its value." A titter ran through the crowd. Lady Montclair's face flushed an unbecoming shade of puce. The evening concluded with the Duke and his bride-to-be leading the first dance, a country dance that Tabitha, thankfully, knew well. As they moved through the figures, she caught glimpses of the varied expressions around them: envy, disbelief, calculation, and, from a few, genuine pleasure at witnessing something authentic in a world built on artifice. "Are you happy?" the Duke asked as they came together in the dance. "Terrified," she admitted. "But yes, strangely happy." "Good," he said. "Because I intend to make you happy for the rest of our lives, even if it means scandalizing the ton on a regular basis. I believe we've accomplished enough scandal for one evening," she laughed. But the ton, dear reader, had only begun to be scandalized. The marriage of the Duke of Westmoreland to Miss Tabitha Grantham took place just 3 weeks later in St. George's, Hanover Square. The church was filled to capacity, many attending simply to witness what they were certain would be a disaster. Instead, they saw a bride radiant in a gown of ivory silk, a gift from her new sister-in-law, her face glowing with happiness as she spoke her vows in a clear, unwavering voice. They saw a groom who could not take his eyes off his bride, whose customary reserve melted into tenderness whenever she looked his way. Most surprising of all, they saw the Dowager Duchess, a woman known for her rigid adherence to propriety, embrace her new granddaughter-in-law with genuine affection after the ceremony. "Welcome to the family, my dear," she was heard to say. "It has been in desperate need of fresh blood for generations." The wedding breakfast that followed at Westmoreland House was sumptuous, the guest list carefully curated to include only those who had shown kindness to the bride. Lady Montclair was conspicuously absent, though her husband and daughter received invitations. The slight was noted and discussed endlessly in drawing rooms across Mayfair. As for the new Duchess of Westmoreland, she approached her role with the same intelligence and dedication she had applied to learning medicine from her father. She made mistakes, certainly. Addressing an earl as "my lord" rather than "my lord Earl" caused some raised eyebrows at her first dinner party. But she learned quickly and won over many with her genuine interest in others and her lack of pretension. Her greatest triumph came 6 months after her marriage, when she used her medical knowledge to save the life of Lady Jersey's youngest daughter, who had fallen ill with a mysterious fever that baffled the physicians called to attend her. The Duchess recognized the symptoms, having seen a similar case in her father's practice, and suggested a treatment that proved effective. After that, invitations flooded in. The ton might forgive many things, but they would never forgive being excluded from the most interesting drawing room in London, where one might meet poets, scientists, explorers, and even the occasional radical thinker, all under the auspices of a duchess who had once been a mere physician's daughter. "You've conquered them," the Duke told his wife as they lay in bed one night, a year after their fateful meeting. "Just as you conquered me. I never set out to conquer anyone," she replied, nestling against him. "I only wished to be myself. And that, my love, is precisely why you succeed where others fail. You are authentic in a world of artifice." The Duchess of Westmoreland went on to bear her husband 3 children, establish a hospital for the poor in London, and become one of the most beloved hostesses of her generation. Lady Montclair never did forgive her for stealing the Duke, but her daughter Penelope eventually married a viscount and, somewhat to her mother's dismay, became great friends with the Duchess. And at balls and routs and soirees throughout London, whenever a young lady of modest means but great character appeared on the arm of a titled gentleman, society matrons would exchange knowing glances and whisper, "Remember the Duke and his country bride?" Perhaps we should not be too quick to laugh. For in the end, dear reader, true love makes fools of us all, but none so foolish as those who mock it.